child protection system, I'll call it CPS, because there is one in every state with a different initials name. The CPS system has the power to intervene, to monitor families, to take them to court, in extreme cases to remove children to foster care, and in more extreme cases to move to terminate parental rights and have the children adopted. So that's our child protective, child welfare system. In terms of what I see going on with Massachusetts and most states' child protective, child welfare system, I think the net in terms of problems that I see, and there are many different versions of what different people see, but what I see is a combination of problems that have to do with unduly limited resources. Secondly, I think it's a system unduly oriented to what gets called family preservation. I question whether it's really a family from the child's point of view if it's incapable, parents incapable of nurturing.
So what do you do when this happens? A loved one, let's say it's your dad, drops into the family group chat with something he thinks is real. It's something about China manufacturing the coronavirus. There's a link to a site you've never heard of with a message calling it scary stuff. So what do you do with this? Do you ignore it? Do you call him out saying how ridiculous you think this is?
If you do that to your dad, you've actually shamed him. My name is Claire Wardle and I'm the US Director of First Draft, and we are a non-profit that we help people navigate the challenges of misinformation online. What happens is that your dad doubles down on his view and he dismisses what you're saying. Use language that's empathetic and to say we're all in this together, and rather than you're wrong, I'm right, here are the facts, because that does not work.
So hold back on all that reactive talk. Maybe try something like this. Yeah, these are scary times. We're all a bit afraid, but let's be careful. What you're sharing is inaccurate, and it feeds into that fear we all feel. Maybe send an article from a legitimate source quoting credible scientists on why the virus wasn't manufactured. Conspiracies can be just as infectious, just as dangerous as a virus, so you have to guard against them.
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have, because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families, and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. The kids belong to whole communities. The kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
Pleasure to see you. Let's talk about the significance of early childhood education, in as much as the influence it can have on a child from 0 to the time they hit 3. What do we know?
Could I start by saying I'd like to correct the introduction, which
Sure.
said affordable childcare, because we want to elevate childcare into public education. So this is about educational care as part of our public school system, public education system.
As opposed to sort of babysitting the kids before and after school.
You got it.
Big difference. So integrated into our public educated system.
Right.
Okay, understood.
So why is this important? The science is really strong, irrefutable. Over the past 25, 30 years, it has increased every single year, that the first 2,000 days of life are the most critical in human development. And in these days, 2,000 days, life trajectories are laid for learning, for health, and for behavior. These are critical. I've been asked, is this more important than secondary and post-secondary education? Not more important, as important, because this is where the foundation of the house is built, and you can't put the walls and the roof on until you have a very strong foundation. And this is where we have lacked investment.
Is it literally the case that if you don't get those first 3 years right, I mean, it's possible you may never catch up?
It is possible, yes. Now, I can happily say that 75% of children are with parents who do get it right, and they'll make sure they get it right. But that's not good enough. We can't lose a quarter of our future population, or perhaps even more, if we don't get it right. If we don't, in this knowledge-based economy, we have to get it right. It is extremely important in those years that we address their needs in terms of nurturance, in terms of nutrition, in terms of stimulation, in terms of physical activity, new activities, and most of all, tender, loving care. So children who get all that will do well. Their little brains will develop.
That's where we are. This is Canada's early childhood education enrollment rates compared to other OECD, basically other Western countries. And, you know, there we are. For those who are listening on podcast and who can't see that chart, we're not all that competitive with a lot of other countries around the world. Why do you think that is?
That's a very good question. Why is North America not there? I think the North Americans suffer from a belief system that the state has no place in the lives of children under 6. We can't get past the belief system that maybe babies should be home with their moms in the first 2,000 days of life. But that's not today's reality, Steve. However, we've struggled with getting past that cultural influence, or impediment, I could say, in investing in the early years. I do think it has a lot to do with the belief system that they really are better off being home with their moms.
Is that not the case?
Well, I'm going to have to say, as an old dog who stayed home with her children, and I think we did a fairly good job, and that whose grandchildren were at home with their moms, and they turned out quite well. But I have visited sites where I have to confess that these children got better than I gave mine.
Say again, you think other children who had early childhood education did better than you?
In a good center, yes.
In a good center, did better than you as a stay-at-home mom?
In terms of stimulation, yes, because I'm not an educator. I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the skills, I didn't have the training. I gave them the basics, and I gave them tender, loving care. I didn't give them the stimulation, which is critically important in preparation for today's knowledge-based economy. That's what we have to position this, not just for children, not just for families, but position Canada in a knowledge-based economy, building our human capital.
Your kids didn't.
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
But we are graduating almost 50% of our high school students with a general certificate, which means they are not literate or numerate. Now that's very high. That means they cannot operate a piece of high-tech equipment in a factory or drive a high-tech truck or any kind of high-tech equipment today, and isn't that everywhere? Even our phones? That's not good enough. We're graduating those high school students to joblessness.
Is it your view that the system that you have laid out, as in this isn't just quote-unquote babysitting, this is part of a public education system, should it be mandatory for all children in this province?
Well, we're not going to say mandatory today because then we bump up against the cultural barrier. We're not going to say mandatory today because then we bump up against the cultural barrier. So we're going to say voluntary. So we're going to say voluntary. So we're going to say voluntary. And that gives parents a comfort zone. And there will still be parents who would prefer to have their little ones in a home type setting. But believe it or not, when there is a high quality children's center attached to public education and a school, the uptake is pretty high. Parents want to take their children there. And let's say they don't have to do it every day of the week. They could do it 3 days a week. Every mom would love to have 3 days off a week. And the previous government, the Wynne government, wanted to take it down to 2-year-olds. Well, we didn't get that. But one day we'll get it. But one day we'll get it. But one day we'll get it.
But the initial upfront investment is a bit breathtaking for governments that are already running massive deficits. So what do we do about that?
It's breathtaking, but you know, it won't take long to get some of that return on investment. Immediately, you're going to get women in the workforce. Immediately, you're going to get some kind of tax revenue. Immediately, you're going to get less drawdown in some of the social services.
Maybe fewer kids going to jail,
yes.
right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Fewer needing mental health care.
Yeah, healthier kids.
Yeah, fewer needing, is that according to the economic report made in Canada by the Conference Board of Canada, this group of very intelligent economists were very surprised to find out how much it was going to reduce our income inequality gap.
Well, I think the conference board said you get 58,000 more women in the workforce right away
Yes.
if they had their
That
child
begins
care
to,
needs.
yeah, and that begins to reduce the inequality gap.
Right.
That is an important goal. So it's a benefit for everybody. It is a win-win.
Do you think there are still too many people in this society who, for cultural and or religious and or just philosophical reasons, oppose this idea?
There are a significant number, yes. So that's why I'm here talking to you.
You're trying to change some minds.
Yes, and I know that you're influential, and so yes, this is a good place for me to start.
If you've retired, you don't have anything to worry about. It's the third time I've said that. I'll probably say it 3 more times. See, in my line of work, you got to keep repeating things over and over and over again for the truth to sink in, to kind of catapult the propaganda.
I don't know how influential we are, but we do have influential people on the program.
I know you are.
I do want to ask you this. You know, you've been very upfront about the fact that you've had, in some respects, a charmed life. You know, you've had a wonderful go, and you are now. Am I allowed to say this out loud?
85.
You're 85 years old. Okay, I didn't have to because you did.
Yeah.
You could be putting your feet up on a beach somewhere and not really worrying about all this. So why are you doing this?
That's a very good question. People ask me all the time because they think, why is she doing this? She should be home knitting.
Not should be, but could be.
Well, I guess there are just a few answers to that. Simply, children have been a passion of mine all my life. I need a purpose. And I think that it's the best thing I can do for aging, to have a purpose, to get up in the morning and do something meaningful. And I think I've chosen something that I might not see come to fruition. However, I believe in it strongly. And
we have a real chance at this new world order. We have a real chance at this new world order.
Yes, and I think perhaps maybe the fact that I am 85 years old, still doing it, maybe does carry a little weight to my message.
I disagree with you. I think you're going to live forever. You will definitely see the fruition of this in your lifetime because you're not going anywhere. You will definitely see the fruition of this in your lifetime because you're not going anywhere.
It is a big idea, a new world order. It is a big idea, a new world order.
Can I ask you a really bizarre, out of left field question for our final question of the day?
Sure.
Okay.
Shoot.
You've got the same last name as a very famous former senator from Arizona, John McCain, and you two are actually about the same age. You ever meet him?
Yes.
You did meet him?
And my husband has. And believe it or not, through a DNA project, they all came from the same place in Ireland.
So you're probably related.
Well, like about 8 generations back, yes.
Huh.
In fact, we are. Not me, my husband.
Your husband.
And believe it or not, there are some similarities to my husband's father. But all through DNA, they came from the same clan in Castlefin. I have to thank you, Steve, because in our crusade to accomplish our goals, increasing public awareness is huge. And I know the respect that this program has. So you are doing us a huge favor. Thank you.